This is per College Sports Network, all sports, all the time. All right. And this was February 26th, so a few days ago. But again, I've been out of commission for a bit. Dylan Raiola, NIL. How much are Nebraska quarterbacks' NIL deals worth? All right. It's been reported that Dylan Raiola is the biggest player Nebraska has added in the NIL era. Despite having one season under his belt, the Cornhuskers quarterback has already successfully secured significant NIL agreements. According to On3.com, Dylan Raiola's NIL value is around $2 million. That makes him, I said 23rd, that makes him the 18th, all right, highest paid earning college football player and 23rd most influential athlete in college sports. So 18th amongst college football players and 23rd amongst most influential college athletes. All right. He currently has a trio of endorsements. The most notable one is EA Sports, which enables them to use his name and image as a character in the video game, namely College Football 25 and other future games. His other deals are with Panini, a trading card company that Raiola agreed with shortly after committing to Nebraska in December of 2023, and merchandise company Campus Inc. Quick question, because there are some players, I think Eli Manning did it, not Eli Manning, Arch Manning, and actually Travion Henderson were not in the college football video game last summer. I could play with Quinshawn Judkins. I could play with Quinn Ewers, but I couldn't play with those other two players. What do you think of players who do not agree to be in the game, Jake? What are your thoughts there?
Well, it's not good for the game. I know Michael Jordan did that back in the day, Charles Barkley. I mean, we've had Bill Belichick would not agree to be a part of Madden in the past. So it's always weird because you're always in your own little world and you're like, something's a little off and I don't know how to process it. But it is what it is. I mean, if you're leveraging for more money, or the next time the next video game comes out, maybe they'll pay you a little bit more. It's understandable on the player's behalf.
I get it. I don't like it, but I think I come from a little bit jaded perspective because, and I've talked about this before, I love the NCAA college football video game. I knew the day it came out. I knew when it came out. I knew where it was coming out, and I was getting that thing. I would eventually go get Madden, and I'd eventually go get other games, and I still love NBA Jams. I mean, NBA Jams from the 90s is still one of my favorite video games of all time. I think I still have blisters on my thumb from playing that thing like 10, 15, 20 years ago and yesterday. But I would have to watch this guy on the screen, number 90, 6'6", 295 from Kennewick, Washington, senior. Guy looked like Ivan Drago, and I was supposed to pretend this dude wasn't me. Because if I went along with the facade, they didn't have to pay me. I didn't even get a free game. I had to go buy the game. So now you've got players who are getting paid to be in the game, and then they choose not to do it. So my first response is to each their own. No judgment, but a little bit of jealousy on my part, because I never had that choice. I never had that option, and I was supposed to live in this alternate reality where that Ivan Drago, I must break you looking dude wasn't me, so they couldn't pay me. So they didn't have to pay me. That drove me nuts. And now you've got guys who aren't getting paid enough opting out of the game. So for me, I'm going to be open and just honest. I come from a little bit jaded perspective of I would have given anything just to get the game for free. Just to get it for free. So there's my jaded point of view on that. All right. Looking ahead to 2025, Raiola is coming off a freshman season that saw him help Nebraska become bowl eligible for the first time in 9 years. He threw for 2,819 yards, 13 TDs, completed 67% of his passes. Nebraska's victory, all right, also had 11 INTs. And Nebraska's victory over BC in the Pinstripe Bowl, he threw for 224 yards and a touchdown, giving the Huskers their first bowl win since they beat UCLA in 2015. What are your thoughts on the value that's been placed on Dylan? Too much, too little, and the fact that Matt Rule's talked about how he hopes these things don't become public. And here we are talking about it publicly. Again, this isn't breaking. This is just something that's been out there. And I was curious to get Jake's thoughts, people on the text line. All right, let me know your thoughts on the text line. Go ahead and give him that number again there, Jake.
402-464-5685.
My take is this. Sounds about right. I mean, that's about what I expected the number to be. Matt Rule stood in front of the podium after his first season. I think it was his first press conference after that season was over. Is like, to get a good quarterback, it's going to take $1 to $2 million. So you find out that here we are a couple years later, year and a half later, whatever it is. Oh, it took about $2 million to get what we believe to be a good quarterback and a guy that we need to be here and a guy who's been peer recruiting and everything else. So it's not shocking. Like Matt Rule seems to be ahead of the curve on certain things. That statement for one. Canceling the spring game. Apparently Michigan's going to play theirs. We have a school that's going to play their spring game. But he took a lot of heat right out the gate for canceling the spring game. Now we've got spring game replacement weekend. Shout out to Steve Sipple for dubbing it that. I love it. And now other people are canceling their spring games. He always seems to be just a little bit ahead of the curve. I hope he's a little bit ahead of the curve, which allows us to get more wins going forward in the future as well. To me, the amount didn't surprise me. It didn't shock me. And frankly, when there was wild rumors and speculation and innuendo that, and other schools were trying to get Dylan, that Dylan might go somewhere else earlier this offseason, imagine had he gone, what effect that would have had on things. Not just because he's a good player with a bright future, but having a centerpiece and a returning experienced quarterback like that. I mean, you look at him and Emmett Johnson, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Having that coming back brings a lot of value. Matters a lot to the team. Now, is everything about one player? Absolutely not. Hey, you're getting paid about $2 million. You got all these NIL deals. You're going from basketball game to hockey game to basketball game to TikTok videos to dance videos. Hey, that's great. I've said it before. Is that part of the package that gets us more wins? As long as you're staying out of trouble, not breaking any laws, hey, you do you. But do more wins come with that? Because if they do, I got no problem with it. If they don't, it's kind of like, hey, we're offering one quarterback but not another. That puts more pressure on the quarterback that you're offering. His little brother. And I hope they all do great, to be clear with you. I'm just speaking openly and honestly about things that could come down the pike later, depending on how the play on the field unfolds in the meantime. If we're winning more games and he's playing well, people are going to love it. If not, people would have viewed that Bill Belichick hoodie and him basically standing there just so he wouldn't get fined, even though he never said that, like Marshawn Lynch every single press conference, because that's basically what he was saying and doing with his body language. People would have viewed that a lot different if Belichick was losing. By the way, it's funny because my son would play Madden more than me. And then the Patriots would come up and I'd be like, that's not Belichick. Like, I didn't know he didn't want to be in the video game. It doesn't surprise me one iota. But I'm like, that's not Belichick. The dude's like 30 years younger. And I point out everything else that didn't make sense. And Jacobs would be like, he doesn't want to be in the game. I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Anyways, Jake, what are your thoughts here? Anything off the text line?
No, I'm not too surprised. Again, if that's the number, kind of makes sense. Like you said, Matt Rule kind of got ahead of it, and I think that was very, I think that's underrated, or maybe we don't appreciate enough how Matt Rule kind of did position Nebraska with that open press conference. Say, hey, that's the going price is $1 million. We're going to be in there. We're going to be asking, and now you're seeing that kind of everywhere. So for Nebraska, one of the top end quarterbacks, right, in a given class to make more than that makes sense. So, like you said, as long as it comes with wins, I think that's good. It's not my money, so it's not necessarily hurting me one way or the other. But you like Nebraska to be competitive. You do wonder, of course, once they go to the system of having 20 million, that's when it kind of gets interesting, right? When you have the $20 million budget, how much of that is going to go to football? And then how much of that can go to, your quarterback, or how much of that can go to your star player? Gets very interesting because they should be able to make more money on the NIL stuff, the actual name, image, and likeness stuff, not pay for play, but the actual name, image, and likeness stuff. So, I don't have a problem with it. In fact, I'd like for Nebraska to keep up with the Joneses. That being said, there have been talks before about Nico Iamaleava over there at Tennessee making close to triple that, even more than that. So that number would become a little bit shocking, but at $2 million, it's like, okay, yeah, that's about what I would think.
Did a great job with that name. That's a tough name that I have practiced many times at home. Nico Iamaleava. All right, trust me. When I first started practicing that, it did not come out that quick. You did it clean. You did a great job, Jake. It's interesting because you talk about triple that. That'd be $6 million. So for those who haven't heard us talk about this in the past, or maybe you're not aware, coming down the pike in the very near future, $20.5 million. That's the cap. It's not for football. It's for sports. The goal at Nebraska to spend on football is $14.5 million. All right. Football being the moneymaker, football being by far the largest team, it is what it is. I don't think that's a shock to anybody. Leave $6 million for all the other sports. But so when you start thinking about, all right, $14.5 million, I mean, if Nico Iamaleava is making $6 million, I mean, that's nearly 50%. You look at Carson Beck, who went into the NFL draft, came back out, the former Georgia quarterback with torn UCL, is down in Miami right now because he's getting paid $4 million. I mean, I'm sitting here talking about I got to ignore Ivan Drago on the screen. This dude's looking for his Mercedes-Benz and his Lamborghinis, which were stolen from his house. We talked about that previously. If Dylan Raiola was getting paid $4 million and he's driving around Lincoln in a Mercedes and a Lamborghini, and all of a sudden everyone's supposed to be on high alert because we're looking for these missing cars or whatever, what would your reaction to that be? Or what if he's making $4, $5, $6 million, like reported for some other quarterbacks? What would your reaction to that be?
Well, I mean, that's interesting because Carson Beck, you figure, is getting that because he's a top quarterback going into last year, was considered to be a top quarterback for the upcoming NFL draft. Things didn't go well at Georgia, injury and interception, stuff like that. But so he is one of the top returning quarterbacks in the nation. Raiola is probably not in that category, right? Mm-hmm. He's kind of projecting to be that. Iamaleava probably in the same category, a little bit ahead of Dylan, but probably not quite a top 5 quarterback in the nation. So I think time will tell if we get there, and the results will be, the results that we have will tell you if he deserves to get along that way. If you're paying, $6 million for Jeff Sims, then we're going to be frustrated. But if it comes along
frustrated
that he's doing well,
that's a kind word.
Yeah. Then I think we'll be okay with it. Like you said, winning cures all. Winning helps. I don't care what you pay him. They go 12-0, pay him everything.
Nobody's looking, and there's not a Buckeye fan out there being like, we spent too much for that team. No. Not one person has come out and said that. They have tried to downplay how important the Michigan game is. I don't know why that would be, but I keep hearing that from Buckeye fans. Does this game mean what it used to? Yes, it means what it used to. All right, the regular season doesn't mean what it used to, but that game's supposed to still mean the same thing. Just ask Michigan fans. I think I know a lot of Buckeye and Michigan fans, so it's all over my Facebook feed specifically. I see it all the time. Oh, my God, shut up. All right, last question, and then we're going to move on to something else. Things, because they're not supposed to be made public. People aren't supposed to know these things. And Matt Rule talked about how he thought that was a good thing. And I understand that. I do think there's a level of protection that comes with people not knowing. A certain level of separation sometimes from fan and player can be good. Access is great. Too much access almost sometimes is not great. At the same time, some of these players are getting paid a lot of money. And then you can come and go as you please, at least for now. So there's a lot of money that wasn't there before. There's a lack of accountability because you can come and go as many times as you want, seemingly. So lack of accountability, and to a certain degree anyways, that wasn't there before. They are starting to settle in on contracts, and you can't just bounce in and out of the portal every 6 months. But what are your thoughts on, and they're not supposed to be public, but what are your thoughts on some of these things that come out, like Carson Beck for 4 and Iamaleava and Dylan Raiola for about 2, and those things being made public? Reporters are going to want to find these things out. It's interesting. That's why we're talking about it. But what are your thoughts on these things? Should they be public for most players, or should they not?
I don't know. You get into the pro sports, you can kind of break down your GM, or it helps the fan. There's more transparency. You say, why did we sign this contract? This isn't working. But without knowing that at the college level, again, it's kind of transitioning, and so you kind of think about that $2 million man on campus, right? Should he just have to go to the same 101 class and sit with the rest of the people, or is he going to be mostly doing online classes and that sort of thing to get away from the fray? So it's an adjustment as far as each individual guy and what they make. A lot of that, once you get into the real world, that certain jobs can be public information. So I don't have too much of a problem with it. I guess I don't have too much of a problem because it kind of holds everybody accountable.
So what Matt Rule said, he thinks it's a good idea if it's not made public. Obviously, he's a football coach looking out for his players first. And he wants less drama and issues towards his players from any outside folks, whether it be media, fans, etc. Family members. Sometimes family members finding out can be a real issue. Dude, I had a guy who umped one of my games when I was 12 call me when I was in St. Louis. He goes, dude, I umped whatever games. He goes, you owe me this amount of money.
Did he really?
Are you serious, bro? It's like, with all due respect, I don't even remember you. And you could have umped every game. I don't owe you anything. Like, what is this? So that's why I talk about a certain level of separation can be good. That's not the only story I have like that. That's the one that made me shake my head the most. Some guy, he even sent me a picture. I'm like, I don't recognize you. You had a hump mask on. I was probably yelling at you for calling strike 3 when it was a ball, all these different things. But so there's that. But then there's also, when I nodded my head when you said NFL, like these guys, it's like semi-pro football now. And NFL contracts, and all these different contracts, and you can look and find things up. And there's a level of accountability that comes with that. I think I like the idea of them being private because these are still young men. But if there isn't some parameters put in place, which I think are coming, the actual enforcement of rules, contracts, all right, things of that nature. So you can't just come and go willy-nilly and just try to be the highest college football mercenary out there and make the most money all the time. Because if that's the case, everything needs to be public. Because then there's no accountability whatsoever. And you can't just do and say whatever you want and try to get away with it with no accountability at all. I see parameters coming in. I don't know how long they're going to take, from revenue sharing to contracts to things of that nature, which makes it, there's got to be some accountability, some guidelines, some reasonability. Yeah, I tried to make up a word and it didn't go well. Things have to be more reasonable, is all I'm trying to say. And I tried to throw ability at the end of it. Didn't work well. In college football, you can't just do and say whatever you want and try to make the most money all the time, and there's no accountability, no reliability. So with the parameters that I do foresee coming at some point, I don't know how long they're going to take. I'm okay with things being more private, but if those things don't come, and they don't come sooner rather than later, things need to be more public, because then that's how you hold people accountable.